Hello and welcome to Money, Me and COVID-19, where we meet with leaders of business and industry and the financial world to try and understand the full impact of COVID-19 on our businesses, on our economy, on our investments, and on our lives as a society. And I can think of no better person than today's guest to represent Britain's entrepreneurs. He started his first business at the age of 15, and he's grown that into a £12 million enterprise across multiple sectors, employing hundreds of people. He's published 4 books, including The Millionaire Clown, and he helps people to grow their business through his online Entrepreneur University. Perhaps most relevant for today is that he's now written a letter to Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak to say, this is the steps we need to take now to save our SME businesses. His name is James Sinclair. James, welcome to the program.
Hello, Graham. Nice to be here. Thank you very much for having me. Hopefully we can have a good chat and see where we go.
Okay, well, perhaps we could start, before we go into detail about your letter, just tell me a bit more about the type of businesses you own and operate and how they've been impacted by lockdown.
Yeah, so I own the type of businesses that are definitely impacted by lockdown. So we're in leisure and hospitality, really. We own a chain of family entertainment centres, an outdoor visitor attraction, a chain of day nurseries, and we wholesale teddy bears. We make teddy bears. We made over 1 million teddy bears that we wholesale to theme parks and holiday parks, and they ain't buying at the moment. So that's pretty much our business. We employ 450 people. We do about 12 million in annual sales. We make about £1 million a year out of that. I've got commercial property and some residential property as well that sits alongside our trading business. And I help entrepreneurs grow their business through my Entrepreneurs University. I go and speak. I'm a public speaker. Obviously, that business isn't doing too well either at the moment. Well, the shining light really is our day nursery business has got some skeleton staff and what I would call skeleton turnover coming into the business. But where we would be doing £1 million in revenue a month, we're probably down to about 150,000 now, and maybe that might go down to 100,000 a month. We're just not allowed to trade. It's actually illegal for us to trade those leisure businesses. However, we have started 2 businesses. We started Entrepreneurs University and a drive-through farm shop. And in its first 15 days of trade, it's done £15,000 worth of revenue. And Graham, I can see things, a drive-through farm shop, what's one of these blooming things? Well, if you think about McDonald's drive-through and you think about a farm shop, if you combine them together, that's what you've got.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, that's the kind of entrepreneurial response I would expect from you. But I mean, I'm not sure if you haven't owned a business, you just couldn't imagine this. But, we all make business plans, but, nobody can plan for going from 1 million a month to 150K a month. I presume you've had to furlough loads of staff and, but the point is it doesn't cover everything. You're still bleeding cash even at a time like this, aren't you?
Yeah, so our landlord, I mean, this is part of my letter to Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak, the landlord thing, we pay £1 million a year in rent to our landlords. None of them have come forward and said you can have a rent-free period yet. They've all said you can have a deferment and you pay it, well, most of them other than 1 or 2. We've just stopped paying all of our bills. We've just stopped everything: utilities, rents, business rates. We've got that 12 months holiday now from the government, so that's good. We're probably going to have to borrow in the region of £750,000 just to cover. I mean, it pains me to say that to you because, I would happily borrow £750,000 to grow my business. I'm not really happy about borrowing £750,000 just to pay for stuff because we're not allowed to trade. Drives me quite insane thinking about it.
Well, I mean, yeah, and it begs the question, how long can you go on hemorrhaging that cash before you have to face a really tough decision about whether you shut up shop or not?
Well, that is a big question, and I have to say I fully don't know the answer to that. What I am doing is I'm yo-yoing those scenarios in my head on a daily basis. Luckily, I own quite a lot of commercial property and residential property, and 2 of our sites are within commercial properties that I own. So the bank have said that you don't have to pay your capital on those loans if you want to up for a year. So for us, I think it looks like we could, make nothing for 3 years if it goes on and on and on, but we will survive through it. Mainly because I'm a bloody stick in the mud and I won't allow anything else to happen. So, might have to sell some properties and just put it into, all of that stuff that you don't want to do. If not, you might have to liquidate your companies and phoenix them out. I know that the government are looking at research. I can't believe that, Graham. I can't believe I'm just so flippantly saying that. But people are going to have those sorts of conversations. People that have never even contemplated doing that. But if you rack up £1 million worth of debts and you think, right, well, I'm just going to be paying this off for the next 5 years and I can't pay myself, you will just have to go, we're going to have to liquidate, aren't we, and start again, or administrate CVAs, loads of different tools. And I think the government have already made, lots of noise that they're going to relax insolvency rules, because I think there is no choice. I mean, I think about one of our sites. We're in Lakeside Shopping Centre. I'm sure you know what that is, Graham. Most people know it is an Essex-based shopping centre, but it's the biggest shopping location in Europe, in fact. It's got a big retail park with it. It's bigger than Westfields if you add in the retail park. And 70% of their tenants haven't paid their rent. People like Primark have not paid, Burger King have not paid, and they can't trade. And you think of a company like Primark that was doing 650 million turnover a month, not a year, a month. They cannot trade. And so they're saying, well, this is unprecedented. Why should we pay rent? And we've stopped paying our rent. But then Lakeside have got loans to banks and they can't pay. I mean, it's a conundrum that you just cannot begin to fathom just how big this could possibly get. So are the government just going to keep printing money? I don't know.
Well, yeah, and I think there's several things come out of what you just said there. I mean, there was a survey last week of about 6,000 SMEs in America, for example, where on average they had less than a month's cash remaining. So they're going to be, you've obviously managed to combine growing your business with also growing your investment portfolio. So you've got more options perhaps to play with than many of these businesses.
Yeah.
But, I think a lot of
go
people...
on forever.
Yeah, well, a lot of people, including politicians, I mean, our prime minister is a journalist. He's never run a business. Don't understand how fragile a business is and how it takes, years and years to grow it, but it can be destroyed very quickly. And I think what you're describing there is all the knock-on effects of that to banks, to unemployment numbers, to the overall cost to the economy of letting these businesses die for the want of some quick action now is almost immeasurable.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not an economist, Graham, but obviously I do read some of the financial papers just to keep, I have no real experience in it in depth. But my thoughts are, when all the countries of the major economies in the G20, bar China maybe, are printing and stimulating their economies with QE, they're all doing it. So my thoughts are, in my simplest head, is none of them are really yet devaluing their currency. I noticed today that the pound is still 125 against the dollar. I mean, it's been about 125 to 130 since I can remember. But I've seen America doing 3 trillion that they're just printing and dumping in their economy. I've read that we're probably going to end up doing 1 trillion. Europe are going for it, in a big way. Canada, Australia, all of these countries. So I'm thinking, are they just going to, I mean, this is just a little conspiracy theory, but they're all just going to have a chat with each other and go, should we just start from zero when this all goes through? Because otherwise it's not going to work. I don't know. I mean, you probably know more on that than me, but I've had no idea the magnitude of this amount of money that they're creating. And I suppose their job is to make sure that they still believe that we believe, i.e. the people, that £10 in our pocket is still worth £10. And that's my simplistic approach to it. I might be wrong.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why I'm buying some gold at the moment. But I think what they need to do, there's obviously going to be a big deflation as all of this hits with, prices going down and unemployment going up and so on. But ultimately, they need inflation because they need to inflate that debt away. So that they can only either generate real growth in the economy, which is proving very difficult. They can default on the debt, which Britain never has, America has a long time ago. Or they can create some inflation to reduce the real value of the debt. So, those are the kind of scenarios they'll be grappling with, I think. But let's bring it to you and your business. And what was it that actually finally triggered you to say, enough is enough, I'm going to write this letter to Boris and Rishi?
Well, so my letter, Graham, is very much designed around businesses and in that SME sector. And I think it's really worth reminding always that an SME business, this is depicted by the government, not by me, as a business generating up to £45 million in annual sales. That's most businesses. That's like 90% of businesses that operate in the UK. And then those businesses that are over 45 million, I think that they're going to be well protected. They've got direct access to get cash from the Bank of England. I mean, never in my life have I known where other than banks could go direct to the BOE and actually get cash. So I'm talking about businesses up to £45 million. And I'd write a letter understanding that we've got to protect the taxpayer as well. We can't just have what I call a bonbon, a sweet shop bonbon of tax cuts, tax freedoms, because we've got to, in my simplistic ways, remember that we've still got to remember that £10 in our pocket is still worth 10 quid. And we don't want to have like what happened at the end of World War I, in Germany, where, you get the rise of, fascism and all of that. So I'm trying to create just a real common sense plan. And here they are. Number one, the furlough scheme, I think, is great. I think it's going to protect tons of businesses. But I cannot believe, as a taxpayer, not as a business owner, I'm saying this as a taxpayer now, that my taxpayer money that I've popped into this system in a big way over my working career is now effectively paying people to sit at home. I am not happy about that. So I understand that we can't have fraud if a company, but on a means-tested basis, I think the government say, right, you're in construction, you obviously don't need to furlough your staff, get back to work, let's relieve that on the taxpayer. You could find a way of doing that. But in my sector, leisure, tourism, hospitality, social distancing rules means that a restaurant makes all of its profit in the last 20% of its turnover on 100% capacity. If a restaurant has to operate at 50% capacity, it's losing money anyway, right? And then it's got to pay all of its staff. Just a light old palaver. So I've sort of said, like, why don't you allow those industries on a means-tested basis that are really struggling for their staff to work whilst in furlough, but then that business tops up the other 20%, so 80% covered by the government, 20% by the business. And then over a period of a year, 6 months, until everyone goes, right, you can all do what you did before, then the government pull it out. But otherwise, you could have businesses where people's mental health, they go, right, well, I'm not working, 9 months sitting at home, watching Netflix, I'm not going to carry on doing anything. And so, I'm really annoyed about that. So I would like a shake up to the furlough system on a means tested basis. Those businesses that are hurt most, we get people back to work as much as possible to allow the furlough to work whilst on furlough, but also really make sure that people don't, because people can massively abuse this system and over profiteer. And we don't want to see that. So like office jobs don't need it, in my opinion, and construction. And the second point is business rates. If you have a material change in circumstances, i.e. you have a fire, a flood, and you can't trade from your premises, you wouldn't pay business rates anyway. So I think that business rates period should start from trading, because people, if we're not allowed to trade till next January, for example, and we've been closed since April, we're only getting 3 months off our business rates. So we need to have that 12 months, because that gets cash into businesses and protects a business's turnover. And that's what the government have got to do here. Forget about collecting tax. They've got to protect businesses' turnover so that they can get their engines fired up again. And I'd like to see them on a means-tested basis as well, Graham. Like, it's not fair that a leisure retail business, leisure hospitality, non-food, I've got a big problem with the supermarkets, and I'll tell you about that in a minute, but non-food retail should be protected for as long as possible until they're back to normal. Number 3, VAT deferment and time to pay. I applaud the VAT deferment plans. However, I think it should be spread over a much longer period. So again, businesses can protect their cash flow, and that's what the cash flow protection that businesses need. Again, on a means-tested basis, for companies really like ours that have to abide social distancing rules. If you think about one of our sites that could have 700 people in, if now they can only have 150 people in, I mean, you don't have to be Carol Vorderman to work out that this doesn't stack up. So if they want to get businesses open, and I think they should allow businesses to be open on site just to get habits back in. This is what I think. You need to get people back into habit of going to work and start doing stuff. Otherwise, we could lose these businesses forever. And tax time.
If I can just come in there, James, I mean, one of the thoughts, obviously airlines are one of the companies that are suffering a lot at the moment. It's one thing for them to say it's okay to do that again, but how long will it take for the kind of social habits such that, I'm not sure how quickly I want to be crammed into a tin can with hundreds of other people sat next to me with recirculating air. So I don't know how quickly I'll get back on an aeroplane. Might there be the same reluctance to go back to a leisure venue where there's going to be hundreds of people there?
Well, Graham, I think you make a really good point there. Who knows is the answer to that question. And I think our mind shift, my mind's going like a yo-yo about what the possible outcomes can be. One day I think, everyone will be fed up being cooped into. I can't wait to go out to a restaurant. I can't wait to get on a plane and go on holiday. Then another night they see someone that's got really sick because they've done it, and they think, well, no, I don't want to do that. And I think people will be changing their minds. However, if we look at every economic crisis in our country, even after every war, usually it's like an elastic band. Everyone goes back to normal. But that normal could be 24 months in this situation. It could be 36 months. Now, I do believe people will go to shops, go to restaurants, go on holidays. But it's, when we talk about a recovery, I don't think it's going to be a V. I think it's going to be a U. But if you look at that U shape, how long is that U going to span out for? And look, this is different to 2008-9 because I think property prices are not going to crash dramatically. I bank with Coutts, and Coutts don't think that property prices in the residential sector are going to crash dramatically because they're seeing people's bank balances, and more cash is rising in bank balances, in people's personal bank balances, than ever before. Because they can't spend it. They can't go on holiday. They can't buy any clothes. They can't go to a restaurant. They can't put hardly any fuel in their car. They're doing less than ever. So everyone is naturally generating cash. I mean, I looked in my current account, Graham. I just, my regular money goes in there, and it just always. And I looked in there the other day. I was like, blimey, my normal, your day-to-day bank account. I was like, flipping heck, I didn't know how to. Yeah, and because I haven't been spending any money, and I physically can't spend. What I can do is buy a bit of food, and that's it. I'm not going out for meals. I'm not buying clothes. Not buying a new pair. I basically want slippers for 8 weeks. All my shoes have got extra lifeline in them now, and so I think I'm ready to spend some money. But I'm just talking about me there as a personal person. So, but what the trick is with the recession, isn't it? I suppose, and us as entrepreneurs is understanding this fundamental that there's always the same amount of money in the world. Money doesn't disappear. money, there's always the same amount of money. It's just convincing people to extract that cash out of their pocket and put it into a different pocket, or into a metaphorical till, if you like. And will people worry that their jobs are on the line and so they're going to hoard cash? That's the thing, isn't it? And I don't necessarily know.
I think so. But I think that, coming back to your letter and what needs to happen now, one of the things that was trumpeted very loudly was this idea of business interruption loans. Now, I mean, I've heard from numerous sources, and my own experience with Barclays. Don't hold your breath waiting for that to come through. I think they've done a few thousand loans, and there are something like 5 million businesses in this country. So it's like 0.002% have actually got a business interruption loan. I mean, have you applied for one of those with your business?
Well, I do know Barclays have. I mean, I'll come on to it. Let me just finish the VAT overhaul, because I've got a whole point in the letter about the Sybil's loans. So let me just go, because that's the next point. But the VAT overhaul, I've also suggested this to government. Industries like mine that can't claim much VAT back always suffer with this nasty tax on turnover. So my idea is, let's have a higher rate of VAT for products and services. So if I go and buy, some sexy little AirPod things from Apple, I'm prepared to pay an extra 2% VAT when I splash out. But on the service industry, where there's very little to claim back on VAT, it really hurts. So I'm saying, whilst we're here, countries that have a lower tourism and hospitality VAT, so Spain, France, and Ireland have a lower tourism tax. So a pub would only pay 5% VAT in those countries, or 11% in Spain, I think it is. Whereas over here it's 20%. And what that does is it suppresses wages in those industries. And so whilst we're here, like, and I'm making as much noise within the sector of leisure, and we're writing to MPs and to the UK Hospitality, which is the industry body, to say, look, overhaul the VAT system. We've been talking about this for 10 years. But if you don't do that for leisure and tourism, you won't have theme parks, you won't have boutique hotels, you won't have restaurants, you won't have pubs. They just will not be able to survive with social distancing measures in place. So a VAT overhaul, but again on a means-tested basis. And I'm trying to come up with the ways to say, look, if you're going to give there, you're going to have to rise it in another way. And that's why I think we should have a products and service VAT. Other countries have that. And France and Ireland, by reducing, here's the thing, Graham, they have proven by reducing tourism VAT down to the sales tax on tourism, the government have actually increase their tax take in those countries. Because what's happened is, it's the reason, Euro Disney was going to go in London, but France got it. The reason France got it is the French government said, we will give you a lower sales tax than the UK are doing. And that's why, and I just think, stupidity. Because you think of all the catering suppliers, all the delivery drivers, the cleaners, the jobs that would have created if it was in London. It proves that your tax take goes up by lowering taxes on turnover in hospitality leisure. So that's that one. Now, your point 5, Sybil's, the coronavirus business interruption loan scheme. So at the moment, there's 2 now. There's the Richie's bounce back loan scheme, which I know from Barclays. Barclays emailed me yesterday, because we do a bit with Barclays and they know that I talk to entrepreneurs. They've released £800 million of bounce back loans in the first few days, which, everyone slags off the banks. I think that's pretty impressive. Everyone, when I shared that, they said, well, yeah, it's not their money, they're lending, they're completely safe. All right, well, whatever. But yeah, so there's that one. But the Sybil's loan, where you want to borrow more than £50,000, we are going to apply for it. It looks like £750,000 for us. I have a problem with it, and I'm going to talk about this. Yes, you need to make sure you've got an accountant or an FD around you, because you have to go into this in quite some depth. It's the short payback that's the problem for this. And I'm very cross about this. I'm considering, do we just borrow that same amount of money but term it out, mortgage debt, over 10, 15 years? Because if I But what will happen is, and people need to understand this, banks work on debt servicing. They use something called CFAT, cash available for debt servicing. So if you use up all of your cash available for debt servicing on a CBILS loan, in 18 months, 2 years' time, and you want to improve your business, buy a business, refurb it, buy a business, you've blown your cash available for debt servicing on a CBILS loan. So this is what people need to be really, really careful of, is you won't be able to invest in your business using bank or term debt for quite a while. So what I've sort of hoping the government will do is say, look, let's turn that out over 10 years. Let's improve businesses' cash flow. I think those businesses just go, well, you know what, let's just go bust. That hurts the taxpayer then, because they can't service the debt over 5 years. And everyone keeps saying it's 6 years. No, it's not, because you're getting a year's interest-free, a year's capital repayment, then you're paying it off over 5 years. You know, governments don't do that. Governments only finished paying off World War I in 2015. Come on. Yeah. They're allowed to term out debt so that it's not a hardship. So we've got to allow these CBILS loans to be turned out, I think, over 10 years so that it's much more manageable repayments for businesses. That's just my view.
So you're saying you may actually go to an alternative source of funding for the loan you need rather than actually accepting the terms of the CBIL as it currently stands?
Well, so you could go to your bank, you could go Barclays, Coots, and that West, whoever, and say, look, I want to borrow that 750,000. I've got a big chunk of property. I'd like to borrow it over 20 years so that you don't even notice the repayments. Now, the difference of paying £750,000 over 5 years via 20 years, big difference, isn't it? You know, and then you could carry on investing in your business. You could carry on. You know, what's going to happen is that it's going to affect wage growth because people, well, I've got this debt to pay back. No one can have a pay rise. I've got to pay this debt back. I'm not going to buy a business, grow a business, scale a business. They'll cut down on all this other stuff to harness paying this debt back, and that's going to stop the growth of our economy. So, I mean, I've really got a problem with that, and I think that it should be turned out over a much longer period. I think that protects the taxpayer as well, because I think people just go, you know what, stuff it. You know, I've only got to pay 20% of this back. I'll get a loan for the 20% back. I'll remortgage my house, clear the 20% that I'm personally guaranteed for, and screw the government 80%. And who does that screw? You and I, the taxpayer.
Exactly. Okay, and then of course the other thing that companies were relying on at this time, that ones who'd taken prudent steps to have a business interruption insurance policy in place, and I'm reading all sorts of horror stories about them not paying out because they can find something in the small print that says it doesn't cover pandemics. What's your experience been with that?
Well, let me read you the paragraph from this letter that I've read, because it's one of my favourite paragraphs. Here we go. Imagine this. Here's little old me, not panicking when this took off. Why? Well, I, like most businesses, felt comforted by the fact that I pay insurance and have done for years. We'd all be tickety-boo. I'd receive my business interruption claim and trade through when normality comes knocking again. I was wrong. You don't need to be Sherlock Holmes to see that insurers are running away. Now, that's the premises of this. Now, look, I understand that insurance works on the premiums of the many pay for the losses of the few. That's the insurance business model. And now insurers are looking at, well, the premiums of the many are going to have to pay for the losses of the many. So our model doesn't work on that basis. But I've seen big people like Hiscox, Royal Sun Alliance, are saying, no, we're not going to pay you out. But these insurance companies have had it good for so long. They're big boys. They own tons of assets. They own industrial estates. They own big, giant office blocks. You know, this is your job, guys. You know, you're going to have to sell some of your assets and get, because people are just going to turn around. What's the point of being insured when you really need it? These are people that I know that would have never have made a business interruption claim. Say you're 65 years old, you've been trading your business for 35 years, you have never made a material claim in your life, and now when you really need it, for the first time ever, your insurer's going, sorry, mate, we don't cover global pandemics. I mean, how many global pandemics? The last one was 1918, Spanish flu. So they've had 100 years. It just drives me insane. So I'm hoping that the government step in here. Now, Boris has said it, Rishi has said it, other ministers have said that they're going to hold insurers to account. How are they going to hold insurers to account? You know, they've got to do this. I mean, personally, they should have, you know, that 330 billion of loans that they put aside. For Sybil's, I think only 25 billion of that has managed to be drawn down now. They should have given 100 billion of that to insurers and said, look, can you divvy this up on a business interruption basis? You know, the government have removed the staffing costs. So if you get a business interruption loan, it covers your staffing costs while you're down, your rents and your rates and all of that. So the government have actually, and usually the biggest part of a business interruption loan is your payroll covering costs. The government have covered that through their furlough scheme. So, it's massively brought it down, but insurers have got to do something. Here's what I'm advising people to do: put in a claim, get the ball rolling on it, and then fight it out. And you get the insurance ombudsman or the financial ombudsman to deliberate on it when they say no.
So, James, I think you also, in your letter, expressed some concern about the treatment of the supermarkets.
Yeah, what I'm annoyed about, Graham, is their sales are up 40% year on year, week on week compared to last year. And frankly, they've been given totally, all of them, £11 billion worth of business rates relief. And I just think the government should be giving that £11 billion of relief to businesses that are struggling. And that's what I think should happen. And it hasn't happened, and hopefully they're going to readdress that. My whole letter is to protect my 450 staff and their livelihoods, and to protect entrepreneurship. We're going to need entrepreneurs more than ever now. We're going to need them to drive our economy forward, to take the risks that they have always taken and solve the world's problems that they have always solved. And so that's what my open letter is. I've sent it to 3 MPs. One of the MPs went, "This is fantastic, send it straight in." And they gave me the email address for Boris and Rishi's office.
Ooh.
Only MPs are allowed. So I sent it off.
Right, we'll have to have you back on the programme when you get a response from them, obviously. But I think the main point I'm hearing from this is not just that what you're doing is to protect SMEs, it's actually to make fairer use of taxpayers' money in a very challenging situation, so that we end up getting the best overall result for the amount that's being spent. So yeah. I think that should get a fair hearing, hopefully.
Yeah, I don't think I've asked for anything. It's like, bloody hell, he's asking for tax cuts, and he's asking for us to become some Singapore, Dubai type tax haven. I haven't asked for that. I've just said, look, if you don't do these things, it's going to cost you more money. And to use the furlough thing as a way to get Britain back to work, not to sit at home, hopefully they'll take that one on board.
Fantastic. Well, on behalf of Britain's entrepreneurs and business owners, thank you for that initiative, and I hope you get a positive response from it. Thanks for joining us today, James.
Thanks, Graham. You take care. Bye-bye.